In today's news, Kremlin dismisses Polish drone attack claims, saying no evidence provided. France's debt crisis threatens Eurozone collapse as military spending soars. Trump slams Netanyahu's reckless Qatar strike as unilateral act of aggression. FBI sounds alarm as AI-powered deepfake scams explode, stealing billions from unsuspecting victims. Trump's tariff revolution, record revenues, legal battles, and the fight for fair trade. Russia on Wednesday formally rejected Poland's claims that its drones breached Poland's airspace overnight, citing that no evidence has been provided which linked the drones to Russia's military. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk definitely asserted that a huge number of Russian drones had entered airspace of the NATO member and that it was an act of aggression. Ukrainian President Zelensky has also alleged that it was an intentional attack, and is using it to try to lobby NATO to provide more direct air defense, but Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has reacted in stating the EU and NATO leadership accuse Russia of provocation on a daily basis. Most often, without even trying to provide any arguments. Russia's charged d'affaires in Warsaw, Andrzej Ordash, summoned to the Polish Foreign Ministry on Wednesday. But he and Peskov underscored that no evidence was provided that the UAVs were sent by Russia. Peskov further pointed out that the drones flew from Ukraine into Poland, and there have been prior such episodes. For example, a November 2022 incident saw a Ukrainian missile land on Polish territory, which was initially widely blamed on Russia, until the missile debris was examined, after which it was determined to be an errant Ukrainian air defense missile. Russia's defense ministry is explaining on Wednesday that range of the UAVs which allegedly crossed the border with Poland do not exceed 700 kilometers, suggesting that such a breach was not possibly. The MOD said it is open to holding direct consultations with the Polish government to resolve the matter. Meanwhile, one former Swedish military officer and analyst of the conflict has offered the following points, pushing back against claims of some kind of intentional Russian attack with a drone wave on a NATO member. 1. Russia isn't attacking Poland. Some Russian drones flew over Polish territory during the attack on western Ukraine tonight. 2. This isn't a continued unprovoked aggression against free and productive nations. U.S. actions against imaginary threats in Venezuela are more unprovoked, and it is questionable if the U.S. presently is a productive member of the world society with its threats to other nations' territorial integrity, support of Israeli aggression, and escalating trade wars. 3. Sanctions have had limited impact on the Russian economy, and to bankrupt the Russian war machine, the West must initiate a full-scale trade war with China, BRICS, and large parts of the world. Half the world economy can't sanction the other half without severe economic repercussions at home. The population in the West are not willing to accept a global economic depression in answer to some Russian drones getting lost. Especially since they might have lost their way due to Ukrainian EW defenses. 4. Russia isn't losing in Ukraine, everybody knows that. Otherwise, Western leaders could lean back in their couches and look forward to Russia losing for a couple of more years. But then Russia might be losing along the entire Dnieper River. Not as far east of the river as they are now. Contrast the above with some Congress members, like Representative Joe Wilson, claiming that this is a Russian act of war against NATO, but broadly among U.S. leaders, incidents like this could serve to get more air defense systems like Patriots into Ukrainian hands. Trump has appeared to slowplay this, but will be pressured to act more quickly and robustly, also as the Trump-backed peace negotiation process seems completely derailed. France stands on the precipice of financial ruin, dragging the entire Eurozone with it. As Paris spirals deeper into unsustainable debt, now exceeding €3.35 trillion, $3.9 trillion, political infighting and reckless military spending have turned the nation into a ticking fiscal bomb. The French government's desperate austerity measures, including slashing public sector jobs and welfare, have sparked nationwide outrage while failing to address the root of the crisis, a corrupt system prioritizing war profiteering over its own citizens. Meanwhile, the European Union watches nervously as France's financial instability threatens to unravel the bloc's already fragile economy. France's financial crisis is not accidental, it is the direct result of decades of unchecked borrowing, corporate bailouts, and militarization at the expense of its people.
Prime Minister Bayrou admitted the grim reality: the youngest French people will pay this debt for the rest of their lives.
Yet, while pensions and social services face brutal cuts, Macron's government funnels billions into NATO-aligned military expansion, echoing the same warmongering rhetoric that has bankrupted nations throughout history. The hypocrisy is staggering. As Bayrou warns that France's debt grows by 5,000 euros per second, Macron accelerates defense spending under the pretext of a non-existent Russian invasion threat. Kremlin officials have repeatedly dismissed these claims as nonsense, pointing instead to NATO's aggressive posturing as the real destabilizing force. But facts don't matter to a regime addicted to perpetual war.
The French public isn't buying the government's narrative.
An Elaid poll reveals 76% believe Bayrou's austerity plan won't fix the debt crisis, while 82% see it as socially unjust. The backlash is so severe that Macron's approval ratings have cratered, with 2/3 of citizens demanding his resignation. Yet, rather than heed the people, the ruling elite doubles down, sacrificing the working class to feed the military-industrial complex. This isn't governance, it's economic warfare against the populace. While Macron pledges 6.5 billion euros in extra military funds, pensions freeze, public sector jobs vanish, and welfare programs collapse. The message is clear: the French people exist to fund endless wars,
not to thrive. France isn't just a national crisis, it's a contagion. Friedrich Heinemann of Germany's ZEW Leibniz Center warns, the Eurozone is not stable at this point. If France defaults, the fallout will ripple across Europe, crippling banks and triggering a financial domino effect.
Deutsche Welle's report highlights the political destabilization paralyzing Paris, making fiscal recovery nearly impossible. Meanwhile, the EU's €150 billion arms procurement scheme proves where its priorities lie.
Rather than stabilize economies, Brussels funnels taxpayer money into weapons while ordinary citizens suffer.
The parallels to pre-collapse empires are undeniable when nations prioritize war over prosperity. Collapse is inevitable. The people must reclaim their future. France's crisis is a warning: corrupt regimes will bankrupt their own people to serve globalist agendas.
The solution isn't more austerity, it's dismantling the war machine, auditing reckless spending, and holding leaders accountable. If the French people don't revolt, they will be enslaved to debt forever.
Israel has bombed a Hamas compound in Doha, Qatar, a key U.S. ally and the site of America's largest military base in the Middle East, in a move that sparked immediate backlash. President Donald Trump openly criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the reckless and uncoordinated attack, emphasizing that the decision was made solely by Israel and did nothing to benefit either nation. On Tuesday, 15 Israeli warplanes launched at least 10 missiles at a Hamas compound in Doha, killing several members of the group,
including the son of senior Hamas official Khalil al-Hayya.
The strike was a blatant violation of Qatar's sovereignty, a nation that has been working with the U.S.
to broker peace in Gaza.
And yet, Netanyahu, ever the loose cannon, decided to act alone, without warning Washington in advance. Trump wasted no time distancing himself from this fiasco. In a statement on Truth Social, he wrote, "Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States, that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals." He later told reporters, "I'm not thrilled about it, I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect," he added, and he had every reason to be. Qatar, which hosts Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military facility in the Middle East,
was blindsided by the attack.
Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani didn't hold back, calling it an act of state terrorism and warning that his country reserves the right to respond.
He also accused Netanyahu of sabotaging peace talks because, of course, that's exactly what this was. This isn't the first time Netanyahu has acted without regard for U.S. interests.
Trump's advisors were furious that they weren't given a heads-up, leaving them scrambling to warn Qatar when it was already too late. The White House claimed it was notified by the U.S. military just before the strike, but Qatar flatly denied receiving any prior warning. Instead, they said the first call from a U.S. official came after explosions were already rocking Doha. Netanyahu, ever defiant, called the strike entirely justified, claiming it targeted the masterminds behind the October 7, 2023, Hamas attacks. But let's be real, this was not about justice. It was about Netanyahu's desperation to look tough. Even if it means alienating allies and derailing peace efforts, the fallout was immediate. The European Union condemned the attack as a breach of international law. The United Arab Emirates, which normalized relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords, called it blatant and cowardly. Even Pope Leo weighed in, expressing grave concern over the escalation. Meanwhile, Hamas, far from being crippled, survived the attack, with its leadership intact. The only real casualty here? Any remaining trust in Israel's judgment. Trump has been a strong supporter of Israel, but even he knows when a line has been crossed. He reassured Qatar that such a thing will not happen again on their soil, while also directing Secretary of State Marco Rubio to finalize a defense cooperation agreement with Doha, yet the damage is done. Israel's unilateral, aggressive actions are making it harder for the U.S. to maintain stability in the region. And Netanyahu? He's playing a dangerous game, one that could isolate Israel even further on the world stage. If Israel keeps acting like a rogue state, bombing sovereign nations without warning, it won't just lose allies, it will lose any credibility it has left. The US can't keep cleaning up Netanyahu's messes forever. Trump's frustration is understandable. He wants peace. He wants the hostages back. But Netanyahu's reckless strikes aren't helping, they're making everything worse. At this point, it's clear that Israel's leadership is out of control. And if they don't change course soon, they'll find themselves with fewer friends, and a lot more enemies. The phone rings. A panicked voice on the other end sounds just like your son. He's been arrested, he needs bail money now, and he begs you not to tell anyone. You wire the cash without hesitation, only to later discover the call was a lie. The voice? A hyper-realistic AI clone. This isn't science fiction. It's happening right now, and the scale is staggering. The FBI reports that since 2020, Americans have filed more than 4.2 million fraud complaints, losing a jaw-dropping $50.5 billion, with deepfake scams fueling the surge. Criminals are weaponizing artificial intelligence to impersonate family members, celebrities, and even government officials, tricking victims into handing over life savings in minutes. And the worst part? Less than 5% of stolen funds are ever recovered. Deepfake technology has advanced to the point where scammers need just a few seconds of audio plucked from social media, voicemails, or even a brief phone greeting to clone a voice with eerie accuracy. According to cybersecurity firm Group IB, these AI-powered voice phishing, attacks are exploding globally, with losses projected to hit $40 billion by 2027. In the Asia-Pacific region alone, deepfake fraud attempts surged 194% in 2024 compared to the previous year. The playbook is simple but devastating. Scammers impersonate a trusted figure, a grandchild in distress, a bank fraud investigator, or even a CEO demanding an urgent wire transfer, then manipulate victims with fear, urgency, and false authority. In one case, an 80-year-old Canadian man lost $15,000 after a deepfake of Ontario Premier Doug Ford tricked him into a fake investment. In another, a grandmother wired $6,500 to bail out her grandson, only to realize the call was a scam. Deepfakes are becoming increasingly sophisticated and harder to detect, warned Sam Kunju, Vice President of Consumer Education at the American Bankers Association Foundation. The FBI's Jose Perez, Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division, echoed the alarm. Educating the public about this emerging threat is key to preventing these scams and minimizing their impact. Who's most at risk? The elderly, executives, and anyone with a digital footprint. Scammers aren't just targeting individuals, they're going after corporate executives, financial employees, and remote workers, where a single manipulated call can drain company accounts. More than 10% of financial institutions surveyed by Group IB reported deepfake phishing losses exceeding $1 million per incident, with an average loss of $600,000, but the most vulnerable group remains the elderly. Limited digital literacy, emotional distress, and familiarity with a loved one's voice make them prime targets. How to protect yourself. The red flags and defense strategies. The FBI and ABA Foundation have released an infographic outlining key warning signs of deepfake scams: visual clues, blurred faces, unnatural blinking, odd shadows, or lips that don't sync with audio clues, flat, robotic vocal tones or slight delays in speech, behavioral red flags, unexpected money requests. Emotional manipulation, act now or else, or uncharacteristic communication from someone you know. Steps you can take to protect yourself. Pause before reacting. Scammers rely on urgency, so take a breath and verify. Use code words. Set up a secret phrase with family members to confirm identities. Reverse search suspicious content. Tools like Google's reverse image search can expose fakes. Limit your digital footprint. The less audio, video of you online, the harder it is to clone your voice. Report scams immediately. File complaints at ic3.gov and alert your bank. Lawmakers are scrambling to catch up. Senator John Husted, Republican Ohio, introduced the Preventing Deepfake Scams Act, proposing an AI task force to combat financial fraud. Representative Yvette Clarke, Democrat, New York, has pushed the Deepfakes Accountability Act, which would require digital watermarks on AI-generated content. Trust nothing, verify everything. The deepfake epidemic is a perfect storm of technology, greed, and human psychology. As AI tools become cheaper and more accessible, the line between reality and manipulation blurs, leaving even the most cautious among us vulnerable. The solution? Skepticism as a default setting. Whether it's a frantic call from a relative or a too-good-to-be-true investment pitch, assume it's a scam until proven otherwise. In a world where your own voice can be stolen, the only real defense is awareness, verification, and refusing to be rushed, because once the money's gone, it's almost always gone for good. On August 29, the U.S. Treasury Department announced that federal tariff collections had surged to a record $31.4 billion in August, propelling year-to-date revenues to $183.6 billion, a 20% increase over 2024. The milestone underscores the central role of President Donald Trump's aggressive trade policies, which have redrawn global supply chains, sparked legal battles, and ignited debates over economic fairness. Yet as revenues climb, critics warn of rising consumer costs, retaliatory tariffs, and long-term damage to U.S. growth. The latest figures arrive amid a judicial storm. Just hours after the Treasury's announcement, a federal appeals court ruled that Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, to impose tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China exceeded his authority. The decision, though temporarily stayed pending a Supreme Court appeal, threatens to unravel a key pillar of Trump's trade strategy. Attorney General Pam Bondi vowed to fight the ruling, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent predicted revenues could still top $500 billion if the tariffs survive legal challenges. In my judgment, the increased tariffs will more effectively counter foreign countries that continue to offload low-priced, excess steel and aluminum, Trump declared in a June 3 proclamation, defending the measures as essential to combating China's market dominance. The data supports his claim. Chinese steel exports hit 118 million metric tons in 2024, surpassing all of North America's production. Yet economists argue the tariffs, while bolstering federal coffers, risk inflation, job losses, and trade wars. The mechanics of Trump's tariff blitz: who pays and why. Trump's tariff regime operates on three tiers: baseline tariffs, a 10% duty on all imports, excluding Canada/Mexico, effective April 5, 2025, targeting $2.2 trillion in goods, 69% of U.S. imports; reciprocal tariffs, higher, individualized rates, up to 125%, on 60 worst offender nations, including China, 30%, EU, 15%, and India, 50%. designed to mirror their tariffs on U.S. goods, product-specific duties, steel, 50%, aluminum, 25%, autos, 25%, and semiconductors, 100%, with exemptions for allies like the UK, which secured a 10% auto tariff for its first 100,000 exports. The strategy has reshaped trade flows. U.S. container imports rose 1.6% in August, but China's volume plunged 10.8%, a shift industry experts attribute to tariff-driven diversification. The trade outlook for the final months of 2025 is not optimistic, warned Ben Hackett, founder of Hackett Associates, citing manufacturing contractions, job market weakness, and consumer fatigue ahead of the holiday season. Country tariff rate imports affected, 2024, $B, China 30% $267.80, European Union 15% $318.10, Canada 35% $256.10, Mexico 25% $255.20, India 50% $54. The economic gamble, revenue versus retaliation. Proponents, like Kevin Dempsey of the American Iron and Steel Institute, hail the tariffs as a necessary check on China's aggressive market practices. Yet economic models paint a grimmer picture: GDP contraction. The Tax Foundation estimates tariffs could shrink U.S. GDP by 0.9% over a decade, costing 829,000 jobs. Household costs. The average American family faces a $1,600 annual tax hike by 2026, with low-income households hit hardest, minus 1.2% after-tax income. The retaliation risks. China, Canada, and the EU have imposed $223 billion in retaliatory tariffs, targeting U.S. agriculture, autos, and whiskey. Tariffs are taxes on American consumers, said Erica York, an economist at the Tax Foundation. While they generate revenue, they also distort markets, raise prices, and invite retaliation. The legal battle: will the Supreme Court uphold Trump's trade war? The August 29 ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit declared Trump's AEPA tariffs unlawful, arguing he overstepped his emergency powers. The court allowed collections to continue through mid-October, giving the administration time to appeal. Legal scholars are divided. Supporters argue the 1977 IEPA grants broad authority to respond to economic threats, including China's fentanyl trade and unfair tariffs. Critics counter that the law was intended for genuine emergencies, e.g., sanctions on Iran, not permanent trade policy. This is uncharted territory, said George Washington University law professor Steve Schooner. If the Supreme Court strikes down these tariffs, it could cripple future presidents' ability to use economic statecraft. The road ahead: tariffs, elections, and global fallout. With the 2026 midterms looming, Trump's tariffs are becoming a political flashpoint. Republicans praised the $183 billion revenue windfall and tough stance on China. Democrats warn of inflation and job losses, pointing to manufacturing slowdowns in key swing states. Meanwhile, global trade partners are adapting. Vietnam and India have gained market share as companies flee Chinese tariffs. The EU delayed retaliatory tariffs for 6 months, buying time for negotiations. China's exports slowed to a 6-month low in August, signaling long-term economic strain. Fair trade or protectionist overreach? The debate rages on as the Supreme Court prepares to weigh in. The stakes couldn't be higher. For Trump, the tariffs are a fulfillment of his 2016 promise to rebalance trade. For critics, they're a self-inflicted wound that risks isolating the U.S. economy. One thing is clear: whether the tariffs stand or fall, their impact will reshape global commerce for decades. The question isn't just about tariffs, it's about what kind of economy we want, said Daniel Eikenson, director of trade policy at the Cato Institute. Do we want fairness, or do we want growth? Right now, we're getting neither.